When I saw the look on Harper's face as she ordered me out the front door, I felt something crack. Something I didn't know was already broken. That night, the echo of slammed doors and the sharp click of my heels against cold marble haunted me far more than the silence I left behind. I was standing just out of sight of the grand ballroom of the Regal Grand Hotel, disguised as one of the catering staff, unnoticed, unseen, just like I'd planned. But what I hadn't counted on was the sting of rejection from my own sister, Harper, the very person I had hoped to protect. The Regal Grand was alive with sparkling lights and polished silver, humming with laughter and the delicate clinking of champagne flutes. Above all, the scent of fresh roses and expensive perfumes mingled with the faint tang of roasted meats drifting from the kitchen. This was supposed to be Harper's night, her engagement party to Grant Carter, a man who wore his family's old money prestige like a suit tailored for the occasion. And me? I was here, but not really part of it. I tugged the black and white apron tighter around my waist, trying to steady my breathing behind the professional mask I wore. I was Sloane Reed, billionaire owner of the Regal Grand Hotel chain. But tonight, I was Sally, a server, a faceless cog in the machine of celebration. Harper didn't know I was here. None of them did. Yet, as I glanced toward the ballroom's grand double doors, I caught Harper's sharp eyes cold, dismissive. She barely nodded at me before turning away, her voice carrying just enough venom to cut through my composure. Staff should use the service entrance. Don't get in the way. I swallowed the bitter lump in my throat. It was a slap not just to my pride, but to years of silence and distance between us. I was invisible, dismissed by the very sister whose happiness I wanted to ensure. So, I obeyed. I slipped through the back corridors, the clang of kitchen utensils and the sizzling from the stove filling the air. The staff bustled past, some whispering curious glances in my direction, but no one recognized the woman who usually owned every inch of this building. The kitchen was a chaotic symphony of noise. Pots clanged, orders were shouted, and the head chef barked instructions. The smell of garlic and herbs wrapped around me, oddly comforting in its raw honesty compared to the polished perfection of the ballroom. I found my place among the dishwashers and prep cooks, no introductions, just work. My hands moved automatically, scrubbing plates and stacking trays, the rhythm grounding me from the storm of emotions inside. Yet, as the night wore on, something else began to simmer beneath the surface. Whispered conversations from the catering staff caught my ear snippets about the Carter family, rumors about financial troubles that didn't add up. At first, I dismissed it. Harper had always been a little naive when it came to Grant and his family, blinded by the glitz and the promise of a new life. But then, a chance encounter in the pantry. Grant's cousin, nervously talking on the phone, his voice barely a whisper but laced with panic. They think the Reeds have money, but we're barely keeping afloat. The investors are pulling out. We need the Carter name to cover this up. My heart hammered against my ribs. A con? At my sister's engagement party? The thought was so absurd it took a moment for my mind to process it fully. And worse, Harper was completely oblivious, still playing the perfect hostess, the eager bride-to-be who demanded perfection not just from her guests but from the staff. I saw her earlier, snapping at the waiters, her voice sharp as she berated a server for a tiny spill. The bridezilla was real, and her cruelty left a sour taste in my mouth. I retreated to a quiet corner, piecing together the fragments of the night. The Carters weren't who they pretended to be. They were frauds, using my sister as their golden ticket out of bankruptcy. And Harper, she was the prize in their carefully crafted con. My mind raced with options. I could confront them now, risk exposing myself and causing a scene. Or I could wait, gather proof, and show Harper the truth on her own stage, her engagement party, in front of everyone who mattered. I wiped my hands on a towel, the rough fabric grounding me. Tonight was more than a party. It was a battlefield. Later, as I watched the Carters from my hidden vantage point, I noticed their desperation seeping through the polished veneer. Grant's forced smiles didn't reach his eyes. His mother, cold and calculating, whispered urgently, her fingers tapping nervously against the champagne glass. They underestimated me. They thought the hotel's owner was far away, uninterested, disconnected. But I was here in the kitchen, in the shadows, watching it all unfold. And when the time came, I would pull back the curtain. The hours in the kitchen blurred into a restless haze, the clatter of dishes and hiss of steam punctuating my thoughts. Every laugh and cheer from the ballroom above felt like salt in an open wound, a reminder that I was on the outside looking in my own sister's happiness just beyond reach. I kept my eyes and ears open, piecing together the Carters' story from whispered conversations and fleeting glances. Grant Carter was the golden boy polished, charming, but the kind of charm that barely covered the cracks beneath. His family, a tangle of debts, unpaid loans, and desperate schemes. I overheard talk of looming bankruptcy, investors pulling out, and plans to use Harper's family fortune as a lifeline. It was a cruel trap, and Harper was walking right into it. Earlier in the evening, I had caught sight of Harper through the kitchen's swinging doors. She was all smiles on the surface, but I could see the strain the way her jaw tightened when Grant dismissed her suggestions, or how she forced laughter at her mother-in-law's biting remarks. Harper had always been the dreamer in our family. While I built my empire quietly, she chased fairy tales. It hurt to see her so blind, so desperate to fit into a world that didn't care about her except as a paycheck. And then there was the way she treated the staff. I remembered the moment like it was yesterday. She had stormed into the kitchen, eyes blazing, after a server accidentally spilled wine on the floor. "Can't you do anything right?" Harper snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the kitchen. "This is my party. I won't have it ruined by careless staff." The room had gone silent, the staff shrinking under her gaze. I wanted to say something to remind her that kindness mattered more than perfection, but I stayed quiet. I was here to observe, to understand, but my silence couldn't last. As the night deepened, I knew I had to act. The Carter's plan wasn't just a threat to Harper's heart, it was a threat to everything my family had built. I slipped away from the kitchen and made my way to the control room near the ballroom. From there, I had access to the hotel's surveillance system and the large screens that projected images and videos for the guests. With a few swift keystrokes, I pulled up documents and footage I'd secretly gathered over the past weeks, the Carters' financial records, phone calls hinting at their desperation, and evidence of their attempts to sabotage the hotel's reputation. Then, I found the live feed to the ballroom screens. Back in the grand ballroom, the party was in full swing. Harper, radiant in her white dress, was surrounded by well-wishers, her laughter ringing through the room like bells. Grant stood beside her, his smile practiced but eyes flickering with something else, nervousness, maybe guilt. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was the moment. No more hiding. With a few taps, the ballroom screens flickered, and then the room fell silent as the faces of Grant Carter and his family filled the giant displays. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice echoed through the speakers, calm but firm. "I'm Sloan Reed, owner of the Regal Grand Hotel chain, and I have something important to share." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the documents began to scroll bankruptcy filings, overdue debts, and correspondence that revealed the Carters' plan to use this engagement to secure financial backing under false pretenses. Harper's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Grant's confident mask cracked, revealing panic. I continued. "They plan to con this family, this celebration, for their own gain. But I believe in honesty, and in second chances." The ballroom erupted into chaos as guests whispered and pointed, eyes now open to the truth. Grant tried to speak, to deny, but the evidence was overwhelming. His mother's face drained of color, and the rest of the Carter family hurried toward the exits, humiliated and defeated. Harper stood frozen, her gaze locked on me. Shock, betrayal, and something else I hadn't expected. Relief. As the crowd settled, I stepped down from the control room and walked into the ballroom, no longer disguised. "Harper," I said softly, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you deserve better than lies." Her shoulders sagged and she nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I'm sorry too, Sloan. I didn't see what was right in front of me." After the storm, we sat together in the quiet of the hotel's lounge. I offered Harper and even a remorseful Grant jobs within my company an opportunity to rebuild through honesty and hard work. The look on Harper's face then was one of tentative hope, a fragile promise of a new beginning. We both learned that night that true value lies not in wealth or pretense, but in authenticity, and that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the deepest healing. The morning after the engagement party felt oddly quiet, like the hotel itself was catching its breath after the storm. The usual hum of housekeeping and breakfast service was there, but something had shifted beneath the polished surface. Even the chandeliers seemed to hang a little lower, weighed down by the gravity of what had happened. I sat in the back office, the soft hum of the air conditioning the only background noise. My fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee. The bitter taste matched the swirl of emotions inside me. Relief, exhaustion, and a cautious hope. Harper was here too. We'd spent the last few hours talking, really talking, for the first time in years. The distance between us had felt vast, but tonight, it felt a little smaller. She looked different in the soft morning light, stripped of the glitter and facades from the night before. Her hair was loose, her eyes a little red-rimmed, but clearer than I'd seen them in a long time. "I'm sorry for how I treated you," she said quietly. "For pushing you away, for being so caught up in everything." I shook my head, the memory of that harsh dismissal still stinging, but I didn't want to dwell on it. "We both made mistakes, Harper. I was angry too because I love you, and I hated seeing you so blind." She smiled faintly, a warmth blossoming between us. It's strange, isn't it? How we can live side by side and still be strangers. Over the next days, I watched Harper begin to change. The bridezilla facade melted away, replaced by someone who genuinely tried to connect with me, with the hotel staff, even with Grant. She apologized to the servers she'd snapped at, brought fresh coffee to the kitchen crew, and listened more than she talked. Grant, too, surprised me. The man who had once been so polished and poised was now humbled, honest, in a way that felt new and fragile. When I offered them both jobs, simple roles within the hotel, they hesitated. But I could see the truth in their eyes. They wanted to start over, to be better. Watching Harper walk the halls, chatting with staff, learning the ropes of the business I'd built, it was like seeing her grow up right before my eyes. The party had been a harsh wake-up call, but it was also a beginning. We shared long talks about values and choices, about how money and status weren't the measure of a person. Harper admitted she'd always felt pressure to be someone she wasn't, to live up to expectations that had nothing to do with her. I understood that feeling all too well. One afternoon, as we stood overlooking the hotel's garden, Harper turned to me. "Thank you, Sloane, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Her words caught in my throat. I squeezed her hand. "You've always had it in you. Sometimes, it just takes a fall to find your footing." The experience didn't erase the pain or the years of distance between us, but it began to heal them. We learned to listen, to forgive not just each other but ourselves. And I realized that the greatest fortune in life isn't in bank accounts or fancy parties. It's in honesty, in family, and in the courage to face hard truths. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a fog, uncertain, slow, but filled with the faintest glimmers of something new. The Regal Grand buzzed with its usual rhythm, yet there was a fresh undercurrent of openness and change. Harper and Grant showed up each day, stepping into their new roles with tentative humility. Harper worked alongside the concierge team, learning to juggle guest requests and the endless details that keep a hotel running smoothly. I watched her from a distance one afternoon, as she patiently explained the history of a local art exhibit to a curious visitor. Her voice steady, warm, and sincere. It was a side of her I hadn't seen before the sister I wished I'd known. Grant took a position in maintenance, a far cry from the polished suit he'd worn at the engagement party. He wore grease-stained overalls and carried tools instead of champagne flutes, but there was a genuine light in his eyes, a desire to rebuild not just his life but his character. One evening, I found myself walking through the kitchen, the scent of garlic and fresh bread wrapping around me like a comfort blanket. The staff greeted me with nods and smiles, the tension from before dissolving into something more genuine. Harper was there, carrying a tray of desserts, her hands steady despite the late hour. "Need a hand?" I offered. She shook her head, smiling. "I've got it, but thanks." We fell into an easy rhythm, moving through the kitchen as if this was where we belonged. I remembered how it felt on that first night, an outsider, invisible. Now, we were part of the same story, woven together by truth and second chances. One afternoon, Grant approached me with a hesitant smile. "I wanted to thank you," he said, wiping his hands on a rag, "for giving me and Harper a chance to start over. I know I don't deserve it." I met his gaze steadily. "Deserve it isn't about the past, Grant. It's about what you do from here." He nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "I'm ready to work hard, to be honest, to make things right." And I believed him. The hardest part was watching Harper navigate the fallout with her friends and family, the whispered judgments, the raised eyebrows at the hotel lobby. But she faced it all with grace, her head held high even when the sting of rejection hit deep. One afternoon, she confided in me. "I never realized how much I cared about what others thought," she said softly. "But now, I want to live for myself." Her words echoed something I'd learned the hard way, that authenticity is the bravest form of wealth. As the weeks turned to months, the bond between us grew stronger. We shared quiet moments over coffee in the staff lounge, laughed at the chaos of busy days, and supported each other through setbacks. The Regal Grant had always been my kingdom, but now, it felt like a home, a place where family could heal, no matter how broken we'd been. One evening, after the hotel had quieted down and the last guests had left, I found myself standing alone in the grand ballroom. The chandeliers cast a soft, golden glow across the polished floor. The silence felt heavy, but peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of the engagement party just weeks before. Harper entered quietly, her footsteps hesitant but sure. She stood beside me, eyes reflecting the flickering light. "I never imagined I'd be here like this," she said softly. "Not as the bride-to-be, but as me." I nodded. "It takes courage to step out of the shadow of expectations." She turned to face me fully, her expression open, vulnerable. "I want to thank you, Sloane, for everything, for seeing through the lies, for standing up for me even when I was blind to the truth." Her words felt like a balm to the wounds between us. I reached out and took her hand gently. We're sisters, Harper. That means more than any mistake or misunderstanding. Our journey hadn't been easy. There were moments of bitterness, tears, and regret. But there were also moments of connection, raw and real. I thought back to that night when Harper had sent me away. Her words sharp and cold. I realized then that sometimes people lash out because they're scared of losing control, scared of being vulnerable. And in that fear, they push away the very people who want to help. Grant's transformation was equally remarkable. The man who once wore a mask of entitlement now embraced humility and hard work. I saw him early one morning, sweeping the hotel lobby floor with quiet determination, a small smile playing on his lips. He approached me later that day. "I'm grateful for the chance to prove myself," he said. "Not just to you or Harper, but to myself." It was a moment of redemption, not just for Grant, but for all of us. As the weeks passed, Harper and Grant worked side by side, not as a perfect couple, but as two flawed people committed to honesty and growth. Their engagement party had been shattered by lies, but from those shards, a new foundation was being built. And I was proud to stand beside them not as a hidden observer, but as a sister, an ally, and someone who believed in second chances. I often think about that night, the sting of rejection, the weight of betrayal, the power of truth. Sometimes, the hardest battles reveal our deepest strengths, and sometimes, the family we think we know holds secrets that challenge us to be better, to love harder, and to forgive more. The fallout from the engagement party rippled through our family and social circles in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Gossip spread like wildfire whispers behind closed doors, judgmental glances at public events, and pointed questions from acquaintances who had once praised Harper's perfect match. But the most important conversations were the ones happening quietly between Harper and me. One afternoon, as we sat in the hotel's sunlit garden, Harper looked over at me, her expression thoughtful. "You know, I used to think wealth was about appearances, fancy parties, designer clothes, perfect smiles," she said, fingers tracing patterns in the soil. "But I see now it's something else. It's about honesty, about being real." Her words settled deep in my chest. I smiled softly, feeling the warmth of a sister truly coming home. I had to admit, it wasn't easy for Harper to rebuild her reputation or for Grant to shake off the shadows of his family's past. There were skeptics, people who doubted their sincerity, but they faced it all head on. One day, I caught Harper helping a young hotel employee who had been struggling with her duties. Her patience was genuine, her encouragement heartfelt. It was a far cry from the bridezilla I'd witnessed just weeks before. Grant, too, surprised me. I found him organizing a volunteer day for the hotel staff, working alongside everyone with a quiet humility that earned respect. Their growth wasn't perfect, but it was real. The Carter family? They never returned. Humiliated and exposed, they retreated into obscurity, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and debts. And while that chapter closed, the one between my sister and me was just beginning. We started spending more time together not as distant relatives, but as sisters who had weathered a storm and found their way back to each other. One evening, after a long day at the hotel, Harper and I sat on the rooftop terrace, the city lights sparkling below us like stars. "I was so lost in trying to fit a mold that wasn't mine," she confessed. "But now, I want to build my own story, one that's honest, messy, and real." I reached out, squeezing her hand. "That's the best story there is." As I reflect on that night, the night I stood hidden among the kitchen staff, I realized it wasn't just about exposing a con or saving a party. It was about seeing my sister, not the perfect bride or the angry woman who sent me away, but the real Harper. And maybe, just maybe, that's what family is truly about. Seeing each other through the masks and lies, and choosing to love anyway. Healing isn't a straight line. It's more like the slow turning of the seasons, sometimes cold and barren, sometimes bursting with unexpected blooms. After the chaos of the engagement party, the long months of rebuilding brought their own challenges, but also moments of grace. Harper and I worked hard to close the gap between us. We had late-night talks over coffee in the quiet of the staff lounge, sharing memories we hadn't dared revisit before. Slowly, the walls came down, the pride, the misunderstandings, the years of silence. One afternoon, I found her sitting by the hotel's grand piano, softly playing a melody that seemed to carry all her regrets and hopes. She looked up when I entered, her eyes warm with a new kind of understanding. "I'm grateful, Sloane," she said simply, "for standing by me, even when I pushed you away." Her words touched something deep inside me, the healing power of forgiveness, both given and received. Grant had become a fixture at the hotel, not as a wealthy fiancé, but as a man determined to rebuild his life honestly. I watched him navigate the challenges with quiet humility, his relationship with Harper growing stronger as they learned to face life's ups and downs together. Their journey wasn't perfect. There were arguments, doubts, and moments of frustration. But beneath it all was a genuine desire to grow, to be better not just for each other, but for themselves. The hotel staff, once wary of Harper and Grant, began to see the sincerity in their actions. Harper's earlier harshness gave way to kindness, and Grant's efforts earned respect. One evening, after a busy day, Harper surprised me by organizing a small gathering for the staff, a simple dinner to thank them for their hard work. Watching her laugh and connect with people she'd once looked down upon, I felt a deep pride. This was the sister I'd always hoped for, the one who knew that true worth wasn't measured by money or status, but by the kindness we show. As for me, I found peace in letting go of the bitterness I'd held onto for so long. The hotel remained my life's work, but it was no longer just a symbol of success. It was a place of family, growth, and second chances. I realized that sometimes the greatest power lies not in control, but in vulnerability, in opening our hearts to truth, no matter how painful. The night before Harper and Grant's wedding, we stood together in the empty ballroom, the place where everything had shattered and everything had begun. Harper turned to me, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you for saving me, Sloane. But more than that, for teaching me to save myself." I smiled, feeling the warmth of healing settle between us. "No one can save us but ourselves. I just helped remind you of that." Sometimes, the hardest truths come wrapped in the sharpest pain. Standing in the shadows of my sister's engagement party, disguised as someone I was not, I never imagined that the night would lead us both to a place of healing. Harper, blinded by dreams and illusions, and I, carrying the weight of silence between us, found our way back through honesty, courage, and forgiveness. What I learned that night, and in the months that followed, is that true wealth isn't found in grand gestures or gilded halls. It lives quietly, in authenticity, in owning our mistakes, and in the bravery to love someone even when they disappoint us. Family isn't perfect. It's messy and complicated, full of mistakes and misunderstandings. But it's also where we find our deepest strength. So I ask you, my friends, when faced with betrayal or disappointment from those you love, would you have the courage to stand up not with anger or vengeance, but with honesty and grace? Would you be willing to forgive, to rebuild, and to believe in second chances? I'd love to hear your stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below, because none of us walks this path alone. If this story touched you, please subscribe for more heartfelt journeys. Together, we can find hope in the most unexpected places. Thank you for listening.